Okay, so first of all, thank you everyone for coming today, and thank you Magdalena for joining us for this talk.
Thanks for the invitation.
We are starting today the series of expert talks related to the exhibition A Matter of Gaze, which is the solo show of Nina, who is also here, so thank you for coming. And today we are talking with Magdalena Strauch, who is educator and Teach For Austria Fellow. She currently is finishing the fellowship program and teaches in the middle school here in 15th district. And we will be talking about the diversity of issues that kids can bring with themselves to the school and what obstacles it makes in their learning process. So for the beginning, could you please outline a bit the basic structure of Austrian schooling system? Because I think also all of us come from different countries and everyone is different, so just the basic structure and maybe the grading system, how many children are in the class usually, like in the public schools, and like what is the situation?
Yes, I'm very happy to do that because I think just like in any other country, Austria has its own special system, so to say. So before we start going to primary school at the age of 6, before that there's kindergarten, and then at the age of 6 you start with primary school for 4 years. In primary school there are about 25 kids in one class with mainly one teacher who is teaching all of the subjects or most of the subjects, and then at the age of 10 we do split kids into different types of schools. I think this is pretty much specific for Austria. There are not a lot of countries who separate kids at the age of 10 already. We do, and we basically have 2 types of schools. One is middle school, so the one I'm teaching in. I just walked here from school before I came, and it took me 5 minutes, so it's more or less just down Maria-Hilfer-Straße, my school. So middle school is for kids between the age of 10 to 14. And then the other type of school you can go to is kind of high school, gymnasium, and you can graduate with your A levels there if you want to. So that would be for another 8 years until you're 18. In theory, there's no difference between gymnasium, the first 4 years, and middle school. Yeah, between the age of 10 to 14, there's no difference. In theory, the problem is in cities, in urban areas, people can choose between middle school and gymnasium. And then the problem is that it mainly depends on your socioeconomic background, which type of school you go to. So the kids who come from disadvantaged backgrounds in terms of their socioeconomic background, they go to middle school, the so-called bad school, and the other kids, they usually go to gymnasium. And that's really a big problem because you have this separation, and at the age of 10, actually, kids coming from disadvantaged backgrounds, they already lack 2 years in terms of skills and education, so to say, compared to kids coming from privileged backgrounds. Then again, it gets a bit complicated because middle school ends at the age of 14. So they should have spent 8 years in school. In Austria, it's compulsory to go to school for 9 years, so they need at least 1 more year. Unless they already had to repeat one of their years, then they have 9 years already. So after middle school, again, in theory, they can do an apprenticeship. They can go to, they can continue with higher education and also do their A levels. But it's very difficult, yeah, because of the circumstances, because of the challenges they're facing, and also because they do in fact lack a lot of skills. Yeah, I'm teaching kids at the age, mainly at the age of 11, but also 13. And if I look at them, many things which would be like they lack the basics in I teach math. They lack the basics in math, but also in English, in German, in many of the subjects. So it's very difficult for them to actually make this step from middle school compulsory education into further education.
And when you said that they basically like this 2 years already, what does it mean? Like 2 years from the primary school, or even like the kindergarten, or is it like the developmental stage, like the early childhood, and that affects it, or what does this mean?
There are a lot of different factors that come together, and it all adds up, obviously. So the Austrian school system also relies very much on the parents being able to support and help their kids at home in terms of their schoolwork, their homework. So maybe because in school the teacher explains a new topic, you maybe practice together, and then if you did not understand that because maybe it was too fast or too difficult for you, the school system in Austria relies on the parents, that they are at home and are capable to explain it to their kids, or that they're able to pay a tutor who then does it with the kids. And of course, kids from disadvantaged backgrounds, for them they don't have that support system. So that's one of the reasons why they already lack skills and why they're 2 years behind actually. And then in fact also sometimes the level, but a lot of the kids I teach, the majority of the kids I teach do not speak German as their first language. And that starts with really kids who just came to Austria and do not speak any German at all. And then some who were born here, unfortunately, also not always speak German as their first or mother language. Yeah? So they even though they're born here, they make mistakes in German when they speak. So you have very different levels of German, which also makes it difficult to teach them all at the same time. Because again, in middle school, you have between 20 to 25 kids in one classroom in terms of German, ranging from you have all kinds of different levels, but also in terms of backgrounds and skills.
Mm-hmm. And before we get more into the actual class and how it looks in the school, can you maybe describe a bit more what are we even talking about when we say the underprivileged background? Because is it only the language, is it migratory background, or what are the diversity of the issues that can affect us?
Yes, diversity is a great word there, because again that comes into play. So when we talk about disadvantaged backgrounds, it's mainly the parents' education and the income. Because in Austria it's very difficult to get a higher educational degree than your parents had. So if that's a relatively low one, your chances are, we're talking about statistics, and obviously for individuals that's always different, and it's possible to achieve more, of course. But if your parents just finished compulsory education, for you in Austria, it's very difficult to get a higher degree. Yeah, if they have their A levels, you're very likely to also stop there with your own education. And if your parents graduated from university, you are very likely to graduate as well from university. So the education is one thing that's an important factor there, but also the income. It usually goes together. And in Austria, it's also connected to a migrational background, but that's not the main factor. It really is income and education of your parents, and that very much in Austria determines your future, which I think is pretty unfair, to say the least. Yeah, but that unfortunately is the reality, and this is what I experience with my pupils. Of course, then sometimes it's difficult in terms of, because you mentioned migrational background. Of course, sometimes then it's difficult for parents to support their kids in in everything regarding school, because first of all, they probably don't know the Austrian school system, and that it actually makes a big difference which type of school you go to at the age of 10. Then they might not speak the language, so they might again not be able to support with homework or different things. Communication with school, with the teachers, might also be difficult due to the language. So again, very different things that come together here.
And as in this project we speak about the relationship between mental health and education, can you maybe tell more about like how this all affects the mental health or like the experience of the child of even being in school? Because it's like one thing is that they don't get to like have all the opportunities, but how they even like feel in the school with all this, like not having the enough support or having the obstacles in the daily life in the school.
Yes. Personally, when I was a student myself, I really enjoyed going to school, well, usually at least. And with my students, I kind of see the opposite. If I ask them, there's hardly anyone who says, I really enjoy coming here, I really like it. A lot of them have very negative experiences with regards to school, the educational system, and very often they also have negative experiences in terms of failure, not being good in school, not having good marks, and that of course creates a lot of stress. Something that also adds to this point is my students know exactly what type of school they go to. Yeah, that type of school, at least in cities, has a really bad reputation. Yeah, so society would say you go to middle school, you have less chances. If you manage to do an apprenticeship, that's already pretty good. Society would think you're not going to do your A-levels, you're definitely not going to go and study. This is what society thinks. My students know that, they feel that, so very often in class we do something and I tell them, okay, we start, and some of them, they might not participate, and then if I ask them, so why are you not working, there's an assignment, they would be like, okay, I just don't know, I'm not good enough. So there's really this, for a lot of them, this I'm not good enough, because they often experience discrimination and other negative things, and that of course creates a lot of stress and negative experiences, and definitely influences their mental health. I started teaching 2 years ago, so I have no comparison to before COVID, but what colleagues tell me and what you can see is also that this really added to their stress. I have a lot of kids who cannot concentrate well. It's very, 50 minutes in school just sitting still, listening to a teacher, I think is pretty difficult for anyone. Unless you're really into the subject or the teacher prepares a great lesson. So I think it's difficult in general, but for them, it's especially difficult to concentrate. Also, self-control. There's a lot of, some of them are quite quickly, quite aggressive. The language is not very nice, the way they talk to each other, but sometimes also to teachers. So you can see the effects of all the stress also in that. I would say mainly being able to concentrate, self-control, but also trying things. Yeah, we have a new topic. I introduce a new topic or something that's maybe not even that new, and I tell them, try by yourself. Yeah, read like 2 sentences, and in those 2 sentences, like your task is being described, and they look at it and then they're like, I don't understand, and I'm like, did you actually read what's written there? And they're like, yeah. So they with even simple things like that, they often don't try. So that's something they did not really learn, and with that, they also need a lot of support in terms of being able to work independently, being able to just try things on their own and not give up as soon as they they face a challenge, basically.
And within the process, in like during the classes, also with other teachers, do you think that it's like, because usually it is that the more focus is put on this like outside manifestation of the symptoms, and it's all about like misbehaving kids and like how to make them sit still and be silent, and you know, like this like almost like fake focus for the more like the teacher's satisfaction and like to like the calm. Like, would you say that this is still the case, that it's like that the support is not coming to support like what is happening within the child, but more just like to like box it somehow into being able to like follow up with the process like in the class?
I would say it really depends on the teacher. Yeah, because again, obviously with each teacher also is an individual, and then some of I do have really great colleagues, and then unfortunately I have colleagues who are less great, which most probably is also not surprising. But so it depends a lot on the teacher, and with some, unfortunately, I would say it's really this kind of trying to just create a fake or an atmosphere where you would have the impression that people are learning or that they are working in a concentrated way or in a focused way, but it's kind of fake. It's just because it's for the teacher, because they might be scared of the consequences or things like that. But then on the other hand, there are definitely teachers who try to understand what's behind a certain behavior, because obviously a behavior always tells you something, and they show their needs or their feelings. They show them, of course, in different ways. A lot of them in rather loud ways, but also but others are super silent. And then, of course, I and also a lot of colleagues, they always try to understand, okay, what's actually the thing behind the behavior, because you also ask about mental health. I think that in schools is really a difficult and underrepresented issue. It's some teachers for sure talk about it, because they think it's important, but it's not standardized. So I think first of all, talking about it, telling kids that this is an issue, that this is important, that your mental health is important, is definitely underrepresented. Very, very underrepresented, because again, it's individuals who might talk about it. I'm not even talking about strategies, how to deal with difficulties or with challenges. And then again, I think it's an issue of resources, because we do have social workers in school, but we have very limited resources. So we have one social worker, and he's also actually working in different schools. So if I notice there is a child who might need further support, because I'm teaching, I'm not a social worker, I'm not an expert on that. So if I notice there might be a child who needs different support or might need someone to talk to, it can be a very difficult process in terms of involving the social the social worker or the right person for that child. Also because, again, resources are an issue there.
Yeah, of course. But in general, you also like mentioned it already a bit, but it's like a general awareness of what the child's behavior can mean about their inner experience. This is something that it's probably not, like you said, it is not standardized. So it's not like, unless the teacher really has the interest to educate themselves, which is again like understandable that it's on top of everything that needs to be done, they just don't know. So this is like, is this often the case that the teachers that are, let's say, not great are simply not educated in the topic and don't understand what the behavior actually means?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, because I think also, I mean, I think it's actually a societal problem. Mental health also in society is not really something you talk about. I think there is a positive development and it's getting better, but in general society, I think we also don't really talk about it, so we don't know a lot about it actually. And then obviously teachers are part of society, so unless you really had that in either your education, then you definitely dealt with it and you know more, or most probably you're a rather experienced teacher, so you had the chance to get or to have different experiences with a lot of different kids, obviously, and then it's kind of, it most probably is a mixture of learning by doing and then noticing, okay, this is something maybe I like doing further research or educating yourself and trying to get more information on how can I best work or support those kids who might need extra support or might need a different approach. But in school, unfortunately, because I mentioned resources a lot, unfortunately, very often kids who might need a different approach often are the difficult kids, are the ones not behaving, are the ones you cannot really put into boxes, and this can be very difficult for a teacher because in middle school it's a bit different. Sometimes there are 2 teachers in a classroom with 25 kids, and they already, of course, everyone has different needs, and often if that doesn't work for the 25 and you have maybe 2, 3, 4 or 5 kids who would need a different approach, it can be stressful for the teacher, and therefore, again difficult for them to find a way to to find the right approach for 25 different kids, some who might need extra support.
So do you think maybe, like, do you feel when you're teaching that your hands are a bit tied by the curriculum and how you need to, like, you know, perform the class, let's say, that if maybe the system itself was different, it would be also easier to accommodate the diverse needs?
On one hand it is the curriculum, because of course there are certain things I should be teaching within 1 year, or maybe the same topic but on different levels, which is really helpful. But sometimes you would really need even more support than that. Sometimes, because I'm coming back again to the skills they lack, and combined with how quickly they are frustrated when they don't achieve something or when they don't understand something, it would need even more people working with in order to be able to work with a small group of kids. So I don't think it's, or I would not say that it's the curriculum that much, more being able to work with a smaller group of kids, because that's something I notice. Of course, the smaller the group, the more they are able to follow, and the more time or possibilities you have to work with the child and to really find the right approach, the right way to explain something, so the child understands it and then suddenly says, cool, okay, now I get it. Yeah, because this is one of the most amazing moments when they're like, okay, no, I'll never understand that topic, never ever. This is way too hard, and this is super difficult. And then suddenly they're like, oh no, it's actually easy. And I'm like, yes, I told you, yeah, and together we'll manage. But having this sometimes takes a lot of time.
Do you think it's maybe also because it's not such a common knowledge about how the mental health, or like not even in the extreme terms of mental health like diseases, but just like emotional needs not being met, like this, like other like support needs not being met, affects the learning abilities. That like this connection is not something that, especially in compulsory schools, is like acknowledged that well. So do you think that maybe if it would be like more focused on explaining to people like, hey, if the kids in school are not supported, they don't feel well, they will not be able to learn, like that this would maybe like change the attitude also of the teachers and the educators related to it?
I think that would be helpful and that would be important. But I think another issue is also that I think teachers need to be aware constantly that with whatever kind of emotions they enter the classroom, the kids will feel and notice that immediately. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are like a constant mirror. If you're stressed and you enter the classroom stressed, the class most probably is going to be very active, simply because you enter and mm-hmm. you often are not even aware. So I think it also needs to start there in terms of teachers themselves having strategies, or being aware of the fact how much they influence the classroom, even on a level they are not aware of. Yeah, they don't even intend, because you come with your own emotions, your mood, which is changing. Of course, it is stressful. It is very challenging to teach 50 minutes and you have 5 minutes break, another 50 minutes. I told you earlier, during the day, very often I don't manage to drink. It's hard to find the time to go to the bathroom, things like that, because it is very, it's very strict, 50 minutes, then a break, 50 minutes again. And then you enter the next classroom, and maybe someone, another colleague wants to talk to you on your way to the classroom, or something happened and you're upset. And so teachers need to be aware of that. I think need to have strategies themselves for their own mental health, because if you don't show up and you're not, or if you show up and you're not feeling well or not fully present, again, it has an influence on the kids. And if you're aware of that and have your own strategies, then I think that would change a lot already. Also because with everything you do in the classroom, you are a role model, because they constantly watch you, and of course they learn. And I'm sure the kids, they learn on many more levels we actually intend. Yeah, because I enter and I want to do geography with them, but they learn so many more things. Simply by the way, how I show up, how I talk to them, how I talk to colleagues, all those little things you might not even, you don't really think about, because in your head most probably you think, okay, I'm here to do 50 minutes of geography or any other subjects, and so I think it's also a lot of awareness when it comes to teachers.
So maybe we can now talk a bit about this like other side of the problem and more get into the system, because of course it doesn't make sense to ask something from teachers if the teachers are not supported. So like how does this like the state support or the systemic support for the teachers look like, if there is any? And maybe we can start with like what everything else teachers need to do beyond teaching. Because this is something I think also people often overlook. That it's like this, teachers go to school, they are like 8 hours there, then they have summer vacations, and it's like, it's very different in reality.
Yes. So, of course, you do teach, obviously, you mentioned that already. Then you have breaks, which I already mentioned. Sometimes you have them for yourself. Very often, at least I hardly ever have them for myself, because then students come and they want to talk about something. They want to know their grade. Did I do well today in the last lesson? They want support for something. So break's over. I need to move to my next class. so it's a lot about relationship building actually. With the kids, it really involves a lot of relationship building, and the better the relationship is, the easier it gets, because obviously again, the better the relationship is, the easier you know which approach to take, how you can work with them. Then it also involves talking to parents for different things. Unfortunately, in the Austrian education system, most probably like in most other education systems, talking to parents usually is about negative stuff that happens in school or that happened in school as part of the consequences we have. I try also to call or to send messages to parents if something worked really well, and if someone achieved something, we talked about or just reached the goal. But unfortunately, talking to parents usually is about negative stuff. Yeah, someone did not behave, this and that happened. Then it's, in my case, talking to my colleagues a lot or planning with them together, because in math, English and German, we usually are 2 teachers in the classroom, so we need to plan together. What do we do? Plan the next lessons. With my colleagues, it actually also involves relationship building again. You do talk and work with a lot of people every day. On average, I see, I guess 80 people, or I work with 80 people on an average day. So it's all about relationship with those people. Then there might be a special project. I did a lot of projects with some of my classes this year. So organizing, planning this, that then often involves the principal, especially when it comes to certain certain projects. And then I need to prepare my lessons for the next day, the week, however you plan that. And obviously, we haven't been talking about written or also oral tests or presentations, which need to be prepared, but then also corrected and graded. Mm-hmm. I think those are the most important things.
I can imagine that among teachers, the burnout is quite a common condition. So, as we were talking about like the support, we were talking about what the teachers need to do. But is there any support? You already said that there is not really support for the children, like the relationship with the children and like assistance and social work and so on. But is there even any kind of support for like teachers' mental health, or like for the soft skills development, or like in this area? Is there anything like it that you can turn to, at least?
Very little, unfortunately, I would say. Certain things are offered also in terms of supervision or groups where you can exchange or talk about your experiences, get input. Some things are there. So there are resources also sometimes offered by the different universities, and it's also for free. But I think often teachers don't know about it. Again, it's limited. And then in school, I have the impression that people are very used to I'm in my classroom, I close the door, and whatever happens inside kind of happens inside. So there's not a lot of feedback. There's not really a feedback culture. Which I think also leads to the fact that people don't really want to talk about maybe problems or challenges they have in class, or that it's difficult, simply because they're not used to it. Like my students, they need to learn many of the things I already talked about, a lot of things they need to learn. But I think we as adults also often need to learn it. And if you never had that, like feedback or talking about problems or challenges openly in a professional setting, you also need to learn that. And so I think a lot of teachers don't know about the possibilities, but might also not use them, because they're so used to working alone and not really opening up in a team and talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this comes to me a bit like almost like a projection, that as you were also saying it before, that with the teachers that they like are not aware how they emotionally affect the kids, then maybe it's also this like inability to see how the emotions of the kids are affecting their learning process, and maybe like to really support the teachers first could have a better impact on the kids' mental health as well, despite the outside challenges.
Yes, and what because I started teaching, or I'm teaching with or through Teach For Austria, what we do have there is a big community. So together with me last year, I'm always talking in school years. So in September 21, I started teaching, and in Vienna, around 40 other people started teaching with me. And it's organized, we are organized in groups, in peer groups, where we talk about challenges. So I might meet my peer group and I'm like, okay, can we talk about this situation or this challenge I had? Or I just text them, we have a WhatsApp group, and I can just text and get input and feedback. And this is something I experience, and a lot of my colleagues experience this is really, really helpful. And of course, you can also talk about, or we talk about, how are you doing? Are you okay? And then you also, so you talk about mental health, and also about strategies, how you can deal with challenging situations, because it is by far the most challenging thing I've ever done so far. So we do have this support, and this is something people describe as really, really helpful and valuable. And I know a lot of colleagues who did not, who studied to become teachers, they started with me in September 21 when I started teaching. So I have a lot of young and new colleagues who started together with me, and they really were lacking that. And they said, this is so nice, because we kind of did introduce that in school, just in an informal way among ourselves. And they realized, okay, this is really helpful. Simply talking about the fact how overwhelmed you are during your first week, or maybe even still after 4 weeks, because you still have so many questions. You come in, you start teaching, and you really start teaching in your first week, and there is hardly any onboarding. In my case, I came into the teacher's room, and then nobody shows you your seat because you don't have one, so you kind of need to ask, where can I sit actually? And apparently little things like that, yeah. And this all adds up and leads to the fact that you're super overwhelmed. And simply talking about that and realizing, okay, everyone else who started teaching with me just feels the same. It's not just me. So I think that would be, really important. But again, it's kind of a culture thing, and then it depends very much on the people. In school, because you were talking about teachers and burnout, in school everyone says the first years are the hardest. Obviously, then it gets easier, and then it depends very much on the type of personality, how motivated you are. Because I have very experienced colleagues who are still very motivated, so they still put in a lot of effort, and they work really well with the kids. And then I have others who have been in the system for quite some time by now, and are not that motivated anymore. Some of them, I have the impression, have kind of given up and are just like, okay, I don't think it's a very healthy way to deal with those challenges, but apparently it's their way of dealing with this challenging job, being like, okay, I'm just trying to put in less effort, and their way of dealing with that challenging situation. But again, I think it would be very helpful and actually healthy for them to have different strategies, because if you're actually not happy in your job, you do spend a lot of time working if you're working full time, and if you're not happy, that eventually affects your health and has other consequences.
Yeah. And as we are talking about the school, there is also this result that it affects the children and what they receive, and this significantly affects their life, basically. So maybe we can now talk really about this like societal level, like what does it even mean if such a high number of kids will not receive the education and the support they need? How will it affect their life, and how this will affect the society as it is?
Yes. I do ask myself that question a lot, yeah, because quite some of my students, they will leave compulsory education and they will lack the basics in math, English, and German, and also in many other subjects or things I mentioned, like trying new things, yeah, not being frustrated by a challenge, but really trying, yeah, or self-control and many other things. And with some of them, I really wonder how is it gonna work out for them. I'm sure a lot of them, they will be fine and they'll find an apprenticeship or maybe also a school for higher education, and they'll make their way. But of course, it is much more difficult for them because if I lack so many things, basic things, actually, it is very difficult. And I think that's also a problem that is a problem for society. I mean, now everyone's talking about the fact that we're lacking people. All the companies or the different areas, they're talking about, they're looking desperately for people, for qualified and skilled people. So we do have this issue in terms of employers, companies. And on the other hand, we do have kids or young people who do lack a lot of skills. A lot of companies, especially when we talk about apprenticeships, by now they say they don't even look at grades that much anymore, but what's important for them is that someone is motivated, that someone is willing to learn, that he or she really wants to do and to finish this apprenticeship. Someone who is on time, who is reliable. They're very often looking for things like that because they say, okay, then I anyway need to invest in their education, and if those things like being reliable, being motivated, if that's there, they will kind of do the rest. But I think it is a challenge. And also now I was talking a lot about companies, organizations looking for employees, but also looking at the other side, looking at my students. Again, they know that they have less possibilities, and they know they have less. They have a different perspective. They have less chances, and that obviously frustrates them. If I was sitting in a school or wherever, and I would have the feeling I have less chances, I'm not gonna make it, I would most probably also not be very motivated. And then that of course has a lot of other consequences. Or I mentioned a lot of my kids do have migrational background. A lot of them are born here but don't have the Austrian citizenship. They also, I mean, they do obviously have a connection to a different country, but they did not grow up in that country. They grew up in Austria, and currently they're not able to vote because they don't have the citizenship. Yeah, so that's not. We're talking about skills, but that's not related to skills or knowledge. But again, that's a different problem, a challenge for us as society. If we have people growing up here who are actually not really, or who are in certain ways not part of society, who cannot take part, who cannot because they don't have the citizenship, but also cannot take part because if they lack the basics when it comes to reading, they don't read, or they don't read newspapers. They don't watch the the news they get or the way they inform themselves is TikTok, is Snapchat, is social media. And we just had, this week we had a journalist in class who was talking to them about fake news and how to distinguish it, or how to notice is a message, a video, news, is that fake or is it real? And it's so relevant for them because it is very difficult for them to tell the difference. And again, this is a very big issue for society.
And you already started with the Teach for Austria, so maybe we can now get into this. What is the Teach for Austria's goal, and how does it come into your work and into the educational system and into the societal challenge that we face?
Sure. So Teach for Austria is an Austrian educational initiative that also exists in other countries. There are a lot of other partner countries, and what they all have in common is, like Teach for Austria's vision is that every child has the chance to live a good life, to develop to develop their potential regardless of their parents' income or education. As I mentioned, those are very determining factors in that process, and that's the vision, regardless of the parents' income or education. And in order to change that, Teach for Austria is looking for university graduates, and then they go to very challenging kindergartens or schools for 2 years, and challenging in that case means working with kids from less privileged backgrounds, in order to support them to continue with their education. So from kindergarten going into primary school, that's the big focus or goal when you work as a Teach for Austria Fellow in kindergarten, and then again from compulsory education into further education. Doesn't matter if that's a school or an apprenticeship, but that they continue learning and that they have an education they can find a job with. So that's the big focus, and that's also the reason why I work, or why I teach in this school now. Did I now forget the part of your question, I think, or did I answer it all?
I think you answered perfectly. Maybe you could elaborate more on how Teach for Austria wants to achieve this.
Yes, thanks. I knew there was something I wanted to mention still. So the reason the program is for 2 years only is also that Teach for Austria is convinced in order to have educational equity, it needs great and motivated people in kindergarten, in school, working with the kids directly. But in order to achieve that, it also needs people changing the system. And this is the idea of the 2-year program, that people with their experiences in the field, in kindergarten, in school, then go on into different areas of work, into different directions, really knowing what the challenges are. Because if we're talking about educational equity, something needs to change on a political level. We're also talking about NGOs, but also the economy. Companies need to be on board. Really, as society, I think we need to say, okay, we can only achieve this together, and this is, like I said, the idea of the 2-year program, with that experience then going into different areas. If people want to stay in school because they, after or during their 2 years, they discover, okay, this is it, this is great, or at least I want to stay in school for a bit longer. That's also possible. In school it's possible. In kindergarten, unfortunately not, because there are different systems. But in school it's relatively easy to continue, at least for a few years. Yeah.
And at the end, because we're almost out of the time, right now, what would you say is like the best strategy for, let's say, the parents or other concerned adults to make changes or attempt changes in the system if they don't have the opportunity to join Teach for Austria? What is it like? Can they address things on like a district level, city level? Like what is where the impact can be done from the individual point of view?
That's a great question, and I think also very difficult one, mainly because I think you can always have the biggest impact if you do something you really have the energy or the motivation for. So if people want to be active on a district level, for example, and really start something there, that would be an option. So I think it really depends on what kind of opportunity you're looking for. You can also support through a lot of different other initiatives. There are initiatives working with schools, supporting the kids. There are NGOs who have mentors, for example. They match pupils with mentors who then help them looking for an apprenticeship or a school. So you could volunteer your time with organizations like that. There are also organizations who send people to school to read to the kids. They're very different possibilities. So it really depends if you want to work with the kids directly and support them directly, then going to school, reading to the kids or supporting them with their further education, finding that would be an opportunity. Apart from that, of course you can become active either by yourself, or I guess ideally you find a group of people. That always works better if you really want to change something in the direction of a campaign or something like that. But that possibility would also be there if you feel that's the right way to take, or the right approach to take.
And is there anything that the children themselves could do? Because you also work in like middle school, which is already like this 10 to 15, like kids especially that are like very mature, let's say, in this like in certain ways and not in certain ways. But is there anything that they could here in Austria or in Vienna do to somehow challenge the conditions?
Yes, there are possibilities. There are things like a students' parliament and things like that. And in each of the classes we have a class representative, and then also one for the entire school. So they can, that then concerns obviously the class level or the school as an organization. But there are, on different levels there are different possibilities. And I saw it this year, not with regards to changing the system or mental health, but I was, with one of my classes, I was working on a project this year, because we are one school, but we have two separate buildings, and they are actually very far away. It almost takes me 10 minutes from one class to another, so they're really, really far away, and that means that the kids in those two buildings, they don't really know kids from the other building well. So we were working on this challenge, and my students, they came up with a really, really great idea. We'll have a getting to know event next week on Tuesday, which they organized, and they came up with games and activities we could have there, so that they could get to know each other. So yes, I guess they usually need support or the frame to work on things like that. But if they have that possibility, they really can come up with great ideas. And now we have a great outcome, like I said, not related to mental health, but in general they can become active with the right support. And then again, the question is which kind of topic or issue are we talking about, and with regards to that issue, where can I, doesn't matter if an adult or a child, where can I actually have an impact? That's always the question, because I personally, or also my students, cannot change now like this the entire system in Austria, but the question is, where can I, as an individual actually have an impact, and where can I maybe motivate others so we can have an even bigger impact and concentrate on that area or on that level.
Yeah, even gaining the feeling that I have power over something and can change something is also maybe something very helpful, as you were talking about, is like feelings of less of worth and like disappointment with the self. So this can be really therapeutic. So even though it's not focused on mental health, it definitely affects it.
Absolutely. That was actually one of the main reasons why I really wanted to do this project with one of my classes, because it's a very challenging class, and I think it's mainly because they really are the class that the ones I teach. They are the class that lack most of the skills, and I think they are very frustrated by the system, and this is why I wanted to do it especially with them, for the reason you mentioned, showing them that they can have an impact, that they can actually implement their ideas, and their ideas are now known in school. The principal knows them. The principal is very excited about the event next week. She's going to be there, and things like that, and just creating moments for them where they feel like, okay, I can change something, I can have an impact, and hopefully they'll take that feeling with them.
Very nice. Thank you so much. I think we can leave it here, but if you have any questions from the audience, I think we still have a few minutes if someone wants to ask a question.
Can you share a success story regarding pupils? Because you said society thinks they are not going to go to university and so on and so on. So maybe you know like success story, and maybe you can elaborate on that in terms of circumstances and context on that, to finish maybe the conversation and uplifting atmosphere.
Absolutely, I'm glad to do that. If I understood your question correctly, it's really about continuing with education. So that doesn't concern my current students yet, because they will have that decision next year. But I've seen kids, or also now, the ones I teach, I do see what they know and how much they know and what kind of skills they have. Very often it is the circumstances or the system that makes it difficult, and even though they might have to work 2-3 times as much or as hard as other kids, they can still make it. And there are a lot of examples of students then finding an apprenticeship, like someone who was in actually their last year in school, but in year 2, which means that young boy, he was young man. He was 15, but he was in a class with kids who were actually 12. And it was kind of his last year, and he did not really fit in. And he managed to find an apprenticeship with ÖBB, so with the railways, and is really, really successful there. So he really found his he really found his place, and he's super successful. He's one of the best in his year. He started the apprenticeship already a couple of years ago, so by now he's leading a small team. So things like that definitely are possible. Or kids continuing with schools, with higher schools, going on to their A-levels, graduating, and then maybe also, if they want to, having the possibility to continue with university, to go on and study.
Then I think we can end. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and thank you, Magdalena, for speaking with us so nicely.
Thanks for the invitation.